All right, good morning. I'm going to talk today about Abraham Lincoln. And so this is part of my video series this week on citizenship. I started the week with a video from a party right after I had taken the oath. Right, I took the naturalization oath 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then that was on a Thursday, and then on the Saturday had some friends over for an apple pie party, and in that party I took 10 minutes and shared some thoughts. Those because that's how I have a party, right? I invite people over and then I speechify at them. That was on Monday. Talked a little bit about Emersonian self-reliance on Tuesday. Took Wednesday and Thursday off, which is not the plan, but here we are on Friday, and I want to talk about Abraham Lincoln. And I want to qualify this because I'm going to talk about Lincoln ahistorically. I've studied Lincoln probably as much as you all have, right? I saw the Ken Burns Civil War documentary. I've read the biographies, or a bunch of them. But there's something resonant about Lincoln within the citizenship project, within the aspirational side of the citizenship project. Lincoln represents something to me that I'm going to try to articulate and see if it resonates with you. I would like to be able to claim Lincoln as a transcendental president, right? As a president immersed in Emerson, and from there to some form of Buddhist awareness of the self. I can't do that. I would love to be able to do that. I can't in good faith do that. What I feel when I think about Lincoln is this unbearable honesty about the sort of inscrutable nature of the universe, the mystery of providence. So a couple of things that come to mind around Lincoln, some stories, right? One of them is a story about my friend Lowry, who I've talked about a lot on this channel. Lowry was a visionary artist and a teacher and a writer. When he was a young man, he had his first truly large piece was in Afghanistan by the Bamiyan Buddhas. I say that not to talk about the piece, but to indicate that it was a significant piece that took several years to arrange. And he tells that Lowry would tell the story that after this piece was done, it was the first of the quiet access installations. Right after it was done, and he and his family returned back to America, he was struck by this immeasurable so whatness. I haven't done all of this. I haven't done this really extraordinary effort for this beautiful concept and work of art. The universe was not lit up with gratitude and celebration. It was lit up with sort of this impenetrable keep going. This was necessary but not sufficient. And I get that same sense from Lincoln, as Lincoln moved into a really profound understanding of the nature of divinity. Right? Because I do think that as the circumstances of the Civil War conformed him to a really magisterial politician, right? The ability to negotiate and navigate through Congress and his own cabinet and the population and his generals. I think he had he embodied the learning that we are not our circumstances, that there is a aspect of the self, the soul, the presence, the authentic being, which does unfold entirely separate from the circumstances. And it's so clear with Lincoln, of course, because the circumstances were the Civil War. The circumstances are exponentially more apparent than they are in my life, and yet the dynamic is the same, right? So there, and when Lincoln talked about providence, and in the Second Inaugural, he talks about both sides thinking God was on their side, and thinking that both sides thinking they were right. The Confederate generals who prayed to God before battle weren't thinking that they were trying to sneak one over, right? That they were on the wrong. They really thought. So that's a meditation on the nature of mankind and the nature of delusion. And those prayers were not answered. Nobody's prayers were answered. Instead, there was a sort of mechanism of providence. And I don't say mechanism meaning like a clockwork device turned up and run. There's definitely a give and take with providence. But it's very inscrutable. Nixon went to the Lincoln Memorial. This is a story where I have to check myself every time I think about it, because I just think it cannot be true. And yet it is. Nixon, in his decline, left the White House one night and went and sat at the Lincoln Memorial with whoever was there, protesters or hippies or tourists, I don't know, whoever was hanging out at the Lincoln Memorial middle of the night in 1971. As I was thinking about this morning, I thought, wouldn't that be a great opera scene or cantata or a poem? Nixon at the Lincoln Memorial. We already have Nixon in China by John Adams, right? So I would have to call it something different. But what a profoundly bizarre image, right? This angry, confused, depressed, drunk president who's a Quaker somehow found himself wrapped up, enmeshed in unwholesome activity, right? His circumstances around his presidency, entirely wrapped up with his personal need. Everyone who is a president is there because of their own personal need. I think Lincoln felt a profound need to know that he had made a difference. In his letters and his in the recorded conversations as a younger man before the presidency, he was not motivated by power or even necessarily by ideology, although he did seem to have a very strong commitment to the idea that the government should build bridges and roads, which is not a particularly inspiring manifesto, but he wanted to know that his existence on the earth had meant something, and that resonates absolutely with me. It may be the thing that pulls me in to Lincoln as the second most. The first most is Lincoln through Whitman. Right, so Lowry and Providence is one access point to Lincoln, or one thing into which Lincoln provides access. This bizarre notion of Nixon seeking some kind of, I like to think he was looking for a sanctification or some kind of, why else go to the Lincoln Memorial? Right. And then Whitman's poem "When Lilacs Last" in the Dooryard Bloom'd, which I actually have some verse tattooed. I mean, this is a Lincoln. I can't really see it. Yeah, you can't really see it, but it's a nice big Lincoln on my shoulder. And then from the 16th, last stanza of "When Lilacs Last in Dooryard Blooms," I'm going to read the largest section. I have one line from it, but I'm going to read the first. All right, so, passing the visions, passing the night, passing, unloosing the hold of my comrade's hands, passing the song of the hermit bird and the tallying song of my soul. That's the line I have on there. The song of the hermit bird and the tallying song of my soul. Victorious song, death's outlet song, yet varying, ever-altering song, as low and wailing, yet clear the notes, rising and falling, flooding the night, sadly sinking and fainting, as excuse me, I'll keep those in because I'm a terrible video editor. Sadly sinking and fainting, as warning and warning, and yet again bursting with joy, covering the earth and filling the spread of heaven, as that powerful psalm in the night I heard from recesses. Passing, I leave thee, lilac with heart-dropped leaves. I leave thee there in the dooryard, blooming, returning with spring. So when I think of Lincoln, I think of that poem, which is sacred, "When Lilacs Last in the Dooryard Bloom'd." And I do think of Emerson, and I think of what it would be to have politicians who call forth these kinds of ideas instead of the fucked up confusion that we have today. And by today, I know we've never had clear, good political times, but what would it be if we had politicians who read Whitman and Emerson? Yeah, I'll just leave it. I'll leave it at that, and just have that be my fervent and forthright wish, that as we think about citizenship, as I think about citizenship, and what it is to be an American, this is the constellation of ideas that really inspire me and push me over the hurdle to take the step to become a citizen. And then voting is an act that supports all of that. There are legal benefits to being a citizen, although most of the responsibilities I've always had to pay taxes. Of course, I had to sign up for selective service when I was a young man, as a resident rather than as a citizen. Citizenship is to be embedded in this tradition of Abraham Lincoln, Walt Whitman, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and everybody around that. That's my constellation. So, let me know if you have any questions, comments. I missed the weekly Q&A this week. It should have been yesterday. But if you drop a note or a comment, I'll be looking at those next week. And keep your wits about you.